Hi, everyone. We're back with another Eurythmics podcast. This is episode 21, and we're calling this one In Person at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Eurythmics Induction. And we have Mark Stevens, my normal co-host, is here as usual, and we're being joined today by two guests. Steve Gayler of Ultimate Eurythmics Archives, which everyone knows who Steve is. And of course, Lynne Foster, big Eurythmics fan. She's from Oregon. She was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So we're excited to talk to Lynne and get her perspectives. And we're just going to talk about everything that we experienced that weekend, starting with, but including Steve Rapport's photo exhibit the night before, and then, of course, the induction ceremony. And you'll hear our thoughts on Eurythmics, and I'm sure all the other artists as well, too. So we're going to kick off now with Steve Gayler, who's going to have some remarks for us and probably something interesting as well. So, hi,
hi, everybody. Nice to see you all again. Unfortunately, I can't stay for very long today. So I've got a couple of bits that I want to maybe throw out for you to talk about later on. I thought I'd start today with something that was a little bit interesting, some information that we've been given recently, which was where each of the inductees ended up in the official voting poll. So we have that information now. Now, as we know, Dolly Parton initially said that she didn't want to be considered for the award. And as a result, that they felt that possibly swayed some of the voting early on. So they decided that she would be inducted regardless, and she was placed into 7th place. I should mention that Judas Priest weren't included in the performing songwriters section. They were put through in a different category, so they're not in this list either. So we've got Dolly Parton in 7th place, followed by Carly Simon in 6th place. We then had Lionel Richie in 5th place. The one that was a bit of a surprise for me was in 4th place was Duran Duran.
Wow.
In 3rd place, we had Pat Benatar, which basically means we're down to either Eminem or Eurythmics. And in 2nd place was Eminem. And in 1st place was Eurythmics.
Wow.
And we have it on good authority that Eurythmics topped the actual 1,000 panel vote.
Gosh.
That's amazing.
So
Wow.
we're really thrilled.
I think that
Brilliant.
shows the respect they have in the industry, as well
Absolutely.
as also the
Yeah.
fact that probably they it's about time they got in as well, so that's
Yeah.
wonderful, Steve.
That's-
Wow, thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, I think it's as I said, for me, Duran Duran in 4th place was a bit of a surprise, because obviously they were doing very well in the fan vote with Eminem, right at the top, battling out initially head and head for a while, and then obviously the voting sort of took a twist. But I was really happy to find Dave and Annie at number 1 in the
That's
in that poll.
fantastic.
I'm not
Another little
surprised.
feather in the cap for the weekend.
I would think that Duran Duran finished 4th only because it was their first year to be nominated.
Possibly.
We know Eurythmics were nominated a few years back and did not make it. So I think probably the voting, the people who do the actual voting probably take into account sometimes, they've got another shot, but of course, Duran Duran got in, and we're spectacular, and
Yes.
and sure brought the fans too.
And we were the only ones privileged to see the a cappella Simon Le Bon,
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
which sounded great, by the way.
Yeah, if you weren't there, they opened the show and there was a technical difficulty, so Simon just started singing a cappella, which was so cool.
Well, I think they all could hear each other because they had their in-ear pieces going.
Right.
So I think the band probably heard themselves, performing as they would do normally. It's just it was only his audio track that was coming through onto the sound system.
Yeah.
And I liked his comment where he said,
Yes.
at least you all knew I was performing live.
I love
Exactly.
And that he can
And,
sing.
I think we're lucky that we got Eurythmics full thing on the broadcast. Some artists surprisingly had their sets cut short, like Pat Benatar.
Pat Benatar, yeah.
I was
Yeah, I was really
surprised by
surprised
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you weren't
How do
there,
you make a 6-hour show into a 3-hour, 4-hour TV show?
yeah.
Yeah, I was really like freaking out. I think I was texting some of you like, oh my gosh, do you think they're going to cut Eurythmics set? You know, because
No.
we're getting only 2 of their 3 songs, but of
Well,
course,
maybe number one in the voting helped.
well,
Yes.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it did seem the audience was universally Eurythmic fans
Yeah.
to me, you know, so that was
Yeah, I mean, everybody
nice.
had a kind word to say about Eurythmics, and my partner was mentioning how what a great, you know, Annie mentioned all the camaraderie and good feelings backstage. We had the same experience with all the fans, even with, you know, the fans of different bands. Everybody was so happy for everybody. Everybody congratulated everybody, everybody's band, you know, and it was just
Yeah.
a nice time, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, that's really cool information though, Steve. I love that. That's great.
Yes, that's great, Steve. So excited to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's just a couple of other things I wanted to sort of throw out there for you guys to perhaps talk about in a little while. But the thing that got me most about the whole ceremony was several of the artists were talking about some of their struggles and their diversity. And, you know, Lionel Richie spoke about how in his early days, he was told that he was, you know, not singing the right music for his color. And he came up with the phrase that rock and roll is a vibe, not a color.
Yeah.
We had the chap from Judas Priest, you know, who is openly gay in the heavy metal scene, sort of saying that, you know, he's, you know, they lost fans in the 1990s when he came out, and that, you know, everything is all inclusive. And it sort of resonated with me when Annie sort of in her speech spoke about how that musicians are a peaceful people, and that you know, that they're just there to sort of bring happiness and love and light into people's lives. And I really thought that the words that she said really picked up what a lot of the other artists had said in their speeches beforehand. And that's something that maybe you'd like to have a discussion about later on.
Yeah. Yeah. I know a lot of my
Yes.
friends who aren't necessarily big Eurythmics fans and watch the show mention that specific thing that she talked about how music, you know, is you know, combats hate, and it's lit the world with love and all that. And that struck a chord with people.
It
Yeah.
did.
And the producers, when they received their award, and I can't remember which one of it was who said it was, and you know, we've spoken about this before, guys, but it was a really poignant moment, I think, when he was talking about how music is being, you know, less of a priority in schools these days. And he was talking about how, well, we don't speak the ABC, we sing the ABC when we're at school.
Right.
And he was talking about how music really resonates with people. And if you ask someone what they were doing 20 years ago, they'll struggle to recall it.
Yes.
But if you play a piece of music, they can go back to a moment in time in an instant. And I really sort of felt that sort of connection with the words that they were saying.
Yeah.
I did as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just the entire thing, which, you know, the broadcast was 4 hours, but we were there for 5 hours and 43 minutes. And Lynne and I sat together during the concert. And I remember distinctly, I turned to her when it was all done and I said, this has been going on for 5 hours and 43 minutes. And I couldn't believe it, because it didn't seem, it was so seamless, the whole thing. And it was so uplifting, because every artist, every single one had a really great speech, and they talked about, you know, their journey, but also about, you know, being part of something bigger. And, you know, and that was great. It was really, it was an amazing night.
And I really liked, you know, some people have said that The Edge perhaps wasn't the right choice for Dave and Annie, but I think he was, because they came from a similar start in many ways, that they sort of were struggling artists, and they were struggling to get that traction and that first sort of initial hit. And I really liked the bit where he said, you know, that Annie and Dave performed to 3 or 4 people in one show, and he said, well, you know, we had 3, 4 if you include the bartender. And
I like that.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, that was one of the best comments of the night, because it really, but it drove it home,
Yeah.
because you can't get much bigger than U2.
No.
And having the Edge talk about that, because if he had just said, but he followed it up, and that was really great because it drove it home to people. Everybody in that kind of industry, you start out really small. You were just struggling, and that was a great comment. And it was a funny line too. It was great.
Yeah.
I think
I think he understood the struggles of a band starting like Dave and Annie's, and Annie in Dave's speech where he says they lived on $20 a week, but then he added that they were some of the best times as well. That
she agreed.
It wasn't all about the money; it was about that creative space.
And I loved Annie because she was saying it was. Yeah. They were so genuine in at those moments, more than I've ever seen them. It was just really so wonderful to see. They were very candid in how they felt.
Yeah. Well, can you imagine how it must feel to get that honor? Especially after so long.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the year that they've been recognized for their songwriting in the Songwriters Hall of Fame, and now they've been recognized as the band and their performance in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I think that's a pretty impressive 2 awards to receive in the same year.
Absolutely.
Yes, as they enter 2023, where we sort of get Sweet Dreams and Love Is a Stranger hitting their 40th anniversaries. I think it's a really nice sort of start to those celebrations for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm hoping.
So unfortunately, guys, I need to head off now.
All right,
but,
Steve.
it's great to sort of dip in with you, and I look forward to hearing the rest of the podcast.
Thank you
Great
for
to
joining.
see
We're
you,
so
Steve.
glad you could join.
Take care, everyone.
Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas
Yes,
to you all.
Christmas.
Bye.
Happy New
Bye.
Year.
So we should probably say we've been trying to record this podcast for a while now, and we have had technical difficulty after technical difficulty, or someone's been sick, or fill in the blank. So we're not intentionally being this late in this podcast, but it doesn't really matter. I think, we're looking back on it, and I think the idea is to look ahead. What does the Hall of Fame induction mean in the future? But
Steve was just talking about 40th anniversary of things next year, and I'm hoping this leads to the release of some stuff. I'm hoping that over at Universal, they're now going behind the scenes. Okay, there was a good reaction to this. Now, what can we put out?
Well, yeah, one would hope. You do hope that that's going on, and you kind of think, how could it not be? I mean, that's a lot of attention, and it's not the action. So yeah. How can they not be looking at it and saying, what are we going to do in next year, the 40th anniversary of Sweet Dreams? So
Gosh, are we that old?
Wow.
we were that young when
Yeah,
it
we're
happened.
that young. Yes, we
Well,
were.
I was 2 when Sweet Dreams came out. So
Oh, well, how wonderful for you.
anyhow,
I was 14. No. No.
I was 17, which I always think is kind of cool, because then 17 again mentions Sweet Dreams. So I feel like a connection to that. Like, wow, I was 17, and anyhow.
Yeah, I was 14 as well. So yeah, it was almost 15 actually when Sweet Dreams was number 1. A week or so, a few days away from being 15. But it was a great concert, and it was great. We should mention all the great fans that were there as part of a little group we had that we had kind of like said, who's coming, and then we went to dinner with a bunch of and Lynne, you stayed in an Airbnb with a bunch of fans.
I did.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, so that was a funny experience, because when it was announced, I didn't know. I kind of had a feeling they were going to win this year, and I didn't know how it was going to work out. And that caused more than a little anxiety, because you're trying to get your ducks in a row, because it was a financial thing for all of us to do. And in August, I started to direct message my friends in England, Steve being one of them, and Joe Frank, Susie Child, and Ruth Address. And we decided that we would stay in an Airbnb together, which was really fun. So because I lived in Los Angeles for 10 years, I did the research on it, and we actually booked it the day before the tickets went on sale, because we thought that things were gonna go crazy in LA, and they probably did because they raised the price. So we stayed in this wonderful Airbnb, but it was pretty exciting. And getting the tickets were, Mark, you were certainly a part of that. That day we got the tickets, because we're all, it was a very stressful day, because I was in, and with the different time zones, I was in a talking room at my the headquarters of my office, and Mark was 3 hours ahead of me, and then we had all the Brits, and we're all on the phone trying to figure it out and trying to get our tickets all in a row. So that was really exciting.
I thought at one point I was convinced I was not going to get tickets because I just could not get any. And I just kept trying and trying. And finally, it was like after 20 minutes, so the tickets came up, and not bad seats at all. And so I grabbed them, but it was very stressful. And Mark and I did the same thing. We reserved the hotel. Well, we found out there was some article that meant we didn't even know where where it was going to be at. And we saw in some article somewhere in very small print at the Microsoft Theater in LA. So I looked it up immediately, saw there was a Marriott next door, told Mark, we both made our reservations right away, hoping, and it worked out. And I don't know how much they raised the rates, but it wasn't the cheapest hotel, was it, Mark?
No, my room was on the 17th floor, I think, and it overlooked the Microsoft.
Wow.
So, so I could even see back in the back where the I guess where the red carpet was.
Oh,
No, I wasn't up there looking at that point, but it was at the very back. But anyway, that was convenient because we could literally walk there, and we all walked to that hotel after the concert. Of course, we'd all said, okay, and that actually protects a podcast a little bit, because we said, okay, after the concert, we'll all go back to the hotel. And we had actually planned to sort of interview people for the podcast, but we all thought, the concert would be, 3 hours long, not 5 hours and 43 minutes. So by the time we got back, we were all exhausted. The bar was closing.
and was jam-packed, by the way.
And jam-packed.
Yeah, it would have taken us an hour to get drinks anyways.
A few people managed.
But what a great night. We were talking a few minutes ago about the fans, and I don't know if you met them, Rex, but I know Lynne was with me, and we met a family. And it was actually a mom and her son, but the husband was there too, but he wasn't with them at this particular moment. But they both had on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Eurythmics t-shirt, the special t-shirt that had been made. Mm-hmm. And what we found out was this young man who's a teenager, his name is Lennox, and he's named after Annie Lennox, and his parents are big Eurythmics fans. And I remember I asked him again, who was wearing a Eurythmics t-shirt. So you're a fan as well? And they said yes. And I forget their names. Do you remember, Lynne?
Christina, she's from Tracy, California. I do remember.
Oh, wow. That's like really close to me.
No, I know.
Wow.
If they're listening, I'd love to have them on the podcast.
Yeah.
It'd be a great conversation.
Yes, we would love to talk to them.
Absolutely.
Isn't that amazing?
What a lucky boy to have such a cool name. And it's such a cool name. Lennox is a great name for a boy.
And a girl. And a girl, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And a girl too. And it can be Len, Lenny, Lennox, whatever his friends want to call him. But yeah, they'll always know why he's called Lennox. And that's so cool. Probably the best part is that he gets to tell his young friends who Annie Lennox is.
But it was so much fun because, not in our specific group, but we met, other fans. We met Jimmy. I'm not sure.
Radosta?
And he was there with a friend who was a Duran Duran fan, and
Veronica.
We were at dinner earlier, and we had this big long table, all of Eurythmics fans, and then there was a big long table across the way, Duran Duran fans, and then there was a small table over here, and we were all just sort of going back and forth with each other, and we all loved that each other were there and having such a good time. There wasn't any competition or anything, and I think we were all specifically happy. I met a Duran Duran fan waiting for breakfast the next morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And everybody they would talk, and that was the fun thing about the end of it, not of course, seeing Dave and Annie and being inducted and seeing their live performance. But that's what I just felt at the end of it. And it was really hard to describe. And I've really not talked about it a great deal on social media, because it's one of those things, it's been hard to sort of tell other people what it was like, but I've had a lot of people, not Eurythmics fans, but just, friends and friends of Amy, that kind of thing, who have said to me, wow, that must have been an amazing show after they saw it on HBO. And everybody just sort of realized, like, wow, that must have been a super night to be part of. And it was.
It was, I have to concur, the camaraderie of the fans, even if they were from a different group, we all were, it was the high point for all of us, as well as the people we follow. And everybody was just so happy. It was such a high. And we sat around a lot of Duran Duran folks. And there was that woman who had the dress made out of cards.
Duran Duran trading cards. Yeah, she ended up on TV.
She did.
Yeah.
She did. Yeah, she was on. Yeah, well, that deserved a little acclaim, because that was quite a.
She was super nice. She was such a nice lady.
Yes, and people had Duran Duran license plate by us.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, it was, the camaraderie was just amazing. Yeah. And it was fun because Jimmy, as you go back to Jimmy, it turned out he's also from Portland, and we had mutual friends. We knew the same people. So small world.
Well, speaking of that, as we were all making our way to get in line to go into the concert, I happened to glance over and noticed a woman sitting by herself on a little bench, and it was a lady I knew from work. I mean, I'm retired now, but from when I worked, she was a good friend of mine at work, and I've been to several concerts with her over the years. I mean, we weren't terribly close, but it's like, there we were. It's like, hello. She's a huge Carly Simon fan, so she was there to see that induction.
Oh wow,
that's amazing.
Yeah,
I have a good friend who'd gone to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame several times in Cleveland, and I saw her in New York in September, and she said it's amazing to go. And so she wished she had gone, but she's on the East Coast, and of course it was on the West Coast. But it's hard to describe, like Mark said, what it felt like to be there. It was magical. It felt like we were, I don't know, in a bubble. I just was.
That's a good way to describe it. It felt like a bubble. And if anybody is listening at home and wondering, what was it like to be there as opposed to what we saw? It wasn't much different. The whole thing was very seamless. They didn't stop to do things. It just kept going. So what you saw on TV, other than what they edited out, was basically the way it was.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's just it. You might think, there was a lot of setup between each act, and not at all. The crews were very interesting, because they would be in the back setting up the next band while something else was going on. But it was so seamless. There wasn't any noise being made.
Right. Well, and it helped that everything was digitally projected. So all they had to do was change that imagery for each band, instead of in the old days where they might have had to, raise things up, put things down, have a new slide come in or whatever.
And I love the screens on either side. So we had such great seats, but I think everybody in that venue had a good perspective, because it's a small venue and the way it's laid out. So, but right before Annie and Dave came on, as you probably remember, the screen they had trouble with the screen.
Oh no,
on our side. I was on our side, but they fixed it. I thought, oh, of course, no.
I was looking at their speech the whole time on the screen, because I wanted to see their faces better. And so now when I think back to their speech, the image that's burned in my mind is a very close up image, almost like I was right there, but it was because I was looking at the screen. But that's what's seared into my mind, is that close up image.
But did you notice when they were going off stage that Annie was like waving and still waving, and David exited and the Edge had exited, but she was still waving out in the corner? She was such on a high. It was, I mean, it was obviously, she was so happy. And
I was, I have to admit, I cried a little during the induction and during their speech. And when they thanked the fans, we Eurythmics, we know that, that they're aware of us. And,
yes.
And for them to say that specifically to us, they knew we were there. And to everybody who was watching at home too, it just meant so much, and coming from them, it's really, really heartfelt. Not that anybody else there wasn't heartfelt, but you know what I'm saying?
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I felt that both of them, when they mentioned the fans, that they were very truthful and being
Sincere.
sincere, I should say. And you felt it, and you felt it
I
at that.
did.
And they were sort of pointing, and not specifically to me and Lynn or you or any, I'm not
Oh,
saying that.
no, to me, to me.
No, it was me. It was me.
To me.
See the fans and you know, and they keep up with social media, and they knew, and Dave knew, that a bunch of us were coming and were flying from all over the world
Yeah.
to be there. And that was the little group that we sort of knew about. That's
Yeah.
not all the other people that, you know, really weren't connected to us or in that moment. But and it was nice to hear that. It was nice to sort of be recognized, because let's just face it, some of that night, that induction, of course, that's for Dave and Annie, but you get a little bit of a sense as a fan that you've been doing this for almost 40 years.
Mhm.
It felt good for you too. Do you know what I mean? Am I?
Absolutely.
Yes, yes.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, I've often referred to it to my friends as the greatest night of my life.
It's
you know,
up
I
there.
did nothing. I did
It's up there.
nothing to. I've done nothing to, to compared to what they've done. But yeah, no, you do feel that way. I mean, you've been following somebody for so long, and you've wanted them to get that recognition, and when they finally do, yeah, of course you feel proud. I would imagine the same way a sports fan feels about their team who wins, pride.
Yes.
No, yeah, or if they don't, that you cry. So that, you get so emotional about these things that you cling to, and it's a very human thing to do. So it's not surprising that we were all, happy, and a little bit for ourselves. Mhm.
And you felt a little proprietary over the moment. I mean, that here we'd been around, and been their fans for so long, and we're in this little niche that we are. But to see other people in the audience, and the respect and the adoration that not just Eurythmic fans have, but I mean everybody has for them, and now to learn from Steve that they were number one in the vote just absolutely blows me away. I got teared up when he said that, because that just means so much. It was disappointing when they didn't get in. What was it, in 18 or 17?
Yeah.
It was pre-pandemic, and who remembers pre-pandemic details at this point?
True.
I just know that Mark and Amy and Pat and I had reservations at a hotel in Cleveland just in case.
I remember.
Do you remember that?
I remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's both times we were like, okay, just in case.
Okay, just in case,
And
just in case.
I just have to say, this is just me being a little selfish now, but I'm so glad it was in California. And when I moved to California from Florida in 1986, I have to say, one of the things in the back of my mind was, oh, there'll be more Eurythmic stuff out there, because California and all that, and from where I came from in the deep South, that Eurythmics weren't that exposed, so to have it end up like this in California was great for me, and not having to fly too, which I don't mind flying, but I don't fly if I don't have to.
Well, it's the flip side of that. It's very interesting, because I have flown several times from the East Coast to LA specifically, or to the West Coast, for a Eurythmics or an Annie Lennox event. So it's brought me there a lot, and from the very first time I ever flew on an airplane, with 1989, when Eurythmics were doing their special We Two Are One concert. And I think I was 21 or something ridiculous. And it was the first, and I flew by myself, and it was the first time I'd ever flown.
Wow.
So,
And we didn't even meet each other that night.
We were standing right by each other, we think, from the perspective. I was there.
You were there too, Lynn? I didn't know
I
that.
was too.
Oh my
And from the
gosh.
perspective of Mark's pictures, I think we were right by each other, because we were right in front. I was right in front. I'm short, so I can always sort of sneak in there and get in there, because
Well, I
there's
don't know if you
advantages to being
remember,
5'2".
but there was a line, before we went in, there was a line that stretched around outside. And
Were you there?
There were some yeah, I was there. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. We were all
Yeah.
there.
I
Oh,
just
gosh.
found out you were there. Yeah, I didn't know that
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
But if you remember, there in front of the theater, there were some marquees, where they would put a movie poster or whatever,
Mhm.
and they had, I believe, some of the album cover tacked up, or the back, the front, and it was that We Two Are One with the front and back cover.
Yeah.
That's about where I ended up in line when we first got there. We had been there for a while, sitting across the street, waiting for people to show up. And we saw Dave and Annie show up early and get out of the limo and go in and come back out.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was from far
Oh,
away.
yeah.
I'm not sure. They weren't in there for very long, so it wasn't like a sound check. So maybe it was post sound check.
No,
but-
we could hear we could hear a little bit of sound check once.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
could
could.
you? Yeah.
It's
What-
all right, I think.
What I remember is we were given a CD of
Yes.
of We Two Are One, and I didn't have a CD player at that time, so I'm like, I can't listen to it.
Yeah, we
So I
got it
had to go
early,
buy.
like-
Yeah, we got it early.
It wasn't like
But
a month before it came out.
So for
Yeah.
me, having this all, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame being in Los Angeles was particularly touching to me, because I lived in LA during the 80s. So I became a Eurythmic fans in Los Angeles. So much of my first, all my exposure during the 80s, a lot of it was in LA. So when the Pantages was literally, I lived in the Beechwood Canyon, which is where the Hollywood sign is, which is 5 minutes from the Pantages.
Wow.
So all of that was so amazing to be down there in November, because I would go to places with my Brit friends, my Brit posse that I was hanging with. And I'd go, oh, that's where I used to go read the British tabloids to see what was going on with Annie and Dave. And oh, that's where I listened to Revenge for the first time. And oh,
So,
you know.
so Lynn, you're perfectly aware of the love LA has for Eurythmics, because
Yeah.
it was very big in the 80s, and they were very, and K-Rock
Oh,
was always
yeah.
very supportive of Eurythmics.
yeah,
Even up to the end,
Yes.
which
Yeah.
was very, up in San Francisco, we had an alternative station, nowhere near the level of K-Rock. And
Yeah.
they would play the occasional odd Eurythmics B-side and all that, but they didn't support like K-Rock did. And as you know, Annie and Dave would play 2 or 3 nights in LA every time they were there.
that's right.
So-
That's right. And they played at the Greek Theater in LA for the Revenge tour. And then they played it. Oh, we went by it. It's the Wilshire Ebel, which is where they did the Touch tour. We went by it. I thought, oh, that's where I saw Touch. So it was really fun to be there for that. I mean, in November, it was full circle, kind of like what I think it was Dave or Annie and Dave who said it was full circle for me. I'm back in LA. It's Eurythmics.
Yeah.
There was a news, and I'm sure you saw it, Lynn and Mark. I know you've seen it on video. There was a news broadcast on an LA station, maybe that night or a couple days later, and they show some footage from the show.
Yes.
And there's one scene where Jonice is on stage, and it's captured perfectly, and you can see my little face down in the corner. And I said that to Jonice, and I said, "Look, Jonice, there's the 2 of us together. I'm in the audience, and you're right there."
Yeah.
I'm
Do you remember?
wondering-
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm just wondering if anybody else, like if you go back and look at that piece, if you might see yourself,
Oh, I do. Oh, I know exactly where I'm at in that.
Okay.
I'm right up at the front of the stage in the corner where we walk, and when they let us in, we're talking about this concert, and it literally was in the lobby
On top of the concession stand.
And so we didn't really know where to go and stand, but we went to the very end of this, and it ended up being the front of the quote stage.
Yeah.
And in that clip you're talking about from the local TV news, and I've still got it, I think I've got it on YouTube somewhere. I can distinctly make out me. I was with 2 friends from LA at the time, and Kelly and Mark, and Kelly has since passed away, but they were both tall. And I'm not tall. I'm not short, but I'm not tall. So, okay. But I can focus on them. That's where they're at. And I suspect if all 3 of us went back and looked, we probably could say, there's Rex, there's Lynn, there,
Oh,
of course, our mutual friend for Rex and I, Maureen, which we talk about all the time. That's how I met her. And
oh,
that's how I came to know Rex in the future, because you 2 met and I met. So it was like,
Yeah,
so
we
what?
met in line. She was right when we got in line. She was the person right there in front of us, or
And-
the person we got right behind in line, and that's how I met Maureen, and then ended up meeting you. And
I'll have to
Maybe.
watch again because there's no two ways about it. I am short. So, I mean, I'm only 5'2", so I couldn't see myself there. I have seen myself on the Good Morning America for the peace tour. I mean, you can see
Oh,
me
wow,
singing
yeah.
a lot. There were a whole group of us going there as well.
Well, apparently
I'm
in
there
the
too.
Yeah.
in the
yeah.
do you remember they did during Peace Tour, they broadcast on the internet the LA show. It was like a
Yeah,
stream- they
Oh, did-
streamed it. Well, you apparently can see me because I was right there in the front row, but I've never been able to see it. But anyhow.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And you kind of wonder about these things. You kind of like, where are those, where's that captured? And does someone have it somewhere?
Yeah.
Archive of it?
Well,
And,
if they broadcast it, someone has got a copy. Somebody has a
there's an
master somewhere.
archive somewhere,
Yeah.
so, and
I'd seen myself in the Peace video DVD because
yeah.
I had a sign. There was another fan, Laurent Rousseau, who I think he's still somewhere. He just is not active. And we had a come back soon sign or come back again or something. And we held it up and it was at the Wembley and you can kind of see it. But
Oh, wow.
we were all over the place. I was a bit of a flying all around.
Did you guys
on
run
that.
into any musicians or celebrities at the Pantages? Because standing right behind us was, I think, Kathy Valentine from the Go-Go's.
I have a picture with Harry Dean Stanton and Siobhan Fahey. And
Oh,
they're up on an upper level after the show.
Oh,
And the friends that I was with at the night, and we went up and we got their autograph. I have I have Siobhan's autograph
I remember seeing
back
Siobhan.
of the postcard, and they were sitting there with Harry Dean Stanton. And just he
Remember
didn't,
seeing-
but
Jodie
wow.
Foster was there. I remember seeing her.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Mhm.
Wow.
Mhm.
but we were so focused on Dave
Yeah.
and Ann. Who cares if there was a movie?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know. We've
um,
got this nostalgia bit back to
I
90s.
know. We
Yeah.
should maybe shift a little bit and talk about Steve Rapport's photo exhibit
Oh,
the night before the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which also occurred in Los Angeles at the Music Head Gallery. So the event, the Hall of Fame was Saturday night. The photo event was on Friday night. And for those who are listening, who are maybe not aware of Steve Rapport, he is the photographer that worked with Eurythmics on a lot of their early videos up through about 1985, all of them. Set photographer. A lot of the stunning stunning photos you see from those video shoots are usually done by Steve Rapport. And we've done an interview with him on my Eurythmics Video Visionaries website and all that. So you can go check that out if you want. But we all attended this exclusive invitation only gallery event the night before. And okay, I'm going to hand it over to one of you to start talking about it.
well, for me, go on.
Oh, go ahead, Mark. Go ahead, Lynn.
So I think I was, Mark, I think we were walking in together. But Steve was such a gracious, what a lovely, lovely man. And he hugged you, Mark. And,
Yeah.
and then he hugged me like I was,
He hugged me too.
all of us. Well, he kind of knew you guys, but he was so gracious and so sometimes as a fan, you don't want to, we never felt smaller as a fan in that particular, we felt like we were kind of VIPs almost at that event because we were such longtime fans and there was never any awkwardness. And then of course, Cameron had invited Jimmy Z.
Right. Yeah. So Jimmy
The
Z
greatest
was there.
guy ever.
Jimmy
I
Z,
mean-
of course, is the harmonica player on Missionary Man,
Oh.
who toured on the Revenge tour and is on the Revenge album. And
He was just really gracious, and we've had him on a podcast. And
Mhm.
if you're listening to this podcast and you've not listened to the Jimmy Z podcast, I completely encourage you to do that. You get some great performance by Jimmy Z, but he was just great that night.
Oh,
I loved that he was there. Again, what a special whirlwind thing this was to go to the Steve Rapport exhibit and then the concert the next night. And it just all was coming together, and Steve's really wonderful photography
oh,
on display in the gallery. And I don't know if we talked about this before, but his photography is so important to the history of Eurythmics because
iconic.
he captured those images from from the videos, Love is Stranger, Sweet Dreams, Who's That Girl? I think Who's That Girl? Sex Crime. Did some from early stuff. It's all right, I think. Here Comes the Rain Again. Oh my gosh, the
Oh,
image
wow. Yeah.
in the Orkney Islands in Scotland. But you just have to think about that. You don't see those images often from any artist's video. He was a kind of a behind the scenes kind of thing the entire time. And the images that he got are really important to the documentation of the history of Eurythmics. So his work is important.
Yes.
It documented it like no one else could have done. I mean, and
I do know, and we do know that earlier that day, some folks were there to interview him from, well, I guess people that work for Annie's archive or whatever, or something like that, were there to interview him and talk to him. So, I mean, I think that shows you that, you know, that Dave and Annie are appreciative of his work and just how important it is and just how stunning it is. I mean,
Gorgeous.
well, let's talk about that for a minute. I wonder when they'll use that, or what exact, because they had filmed.
I know I gather from what I've seen or heard over the years, that they just either they or she is creating an archive, and I don't know if it's for their personal use or whatever, or if it's intended for eventually to come out somehow. I don't know, but
That's
that's
interesting.
really about it. I would think mostly it's probably for their own personal archives, their own career records of their own career.
But you can follow Steve Rapport on social media. He has a great Instagram page and Facebook too, I guess, but definitely Instagram.
And you can go purchase his prints too from his website. I mean, they're stunning prints. I mean, I've purchased a couple of myself, and I'm just so glad that I have.
And he has a great little book out.
Yes.
Called, of course, he did a book. His photography was in a book that I got signed. at the.
I did too.
At the LA event this year.
Yes, longtime fans will know about this.
Yeah, 1984. That the great book. And so I got him to sign it. So that was cool.
Well, that's the Sweet Dreams definitive biography, right?
Yes,
that he co-wrote with his buddy Jimmy Waller, I believe that was his name.
Yeah, okay.
And who since has passed away. But yeah, so that's something for the fans in case they didn't realize that Steve Rapport is the co-author of the Sweet Dreams definitive biography.
I didn't know that.
And of course, all his all the photos in there, or most of the photos, are probably his. So yeah, Mark got that signed, and
I got the little book signed.
Yeah.
But all that's nice. But it was that I think that night made it even more special,
And of course, that was a very LA experience. It was on Sunset Boulevard, and the palm trees and the hip little stores and the galleries and all that, and it was very LA, and so it was so much fun.
It was a lot of fun.
Fun.
With some killer lemon drops, and that's all I'm going to say about that.
I drank the red wine.
No, I had the lemon drops.
So did I.
Yeah.
But anyway, so let's talk about what we think all this means. The concert, the induction. What does it mean for the future, if anything? What's your thoughts on it, Rex, Lynne?
Well, I think it means that hopefully we're going to see, archival things come out, box sets, remasters, things like that. As far as a new album and a tour, I really don't see that happening. Maybe an album, because that's easier to do than an album and a tour. But I don't know. They don't really owe us anything, so they could ride off into the sunset and do their own stuff. Annie Lennox can still do her stuff. Dave can still do his stuff. Would I love to see Eurythmics reform and put out an album and tour? Of course. But realistically, I think it's over. I'm just being blunt. Okay, there we go.
So Lynne, what do you think?
Well, I kind of agree with Rex. I think that maybe an album, and I think remasters, it would be nice to see more. But I don't foresee a tour, maybe one-off things. It did seem the
Yeah.
culmination.
Yeah,
I
I
mean, I
agree with
have-
you. One-off things, like maybe,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah.
I
Or
think
something
that Annie,
virtual.
yeah, and I think that, of course, we know Dave would do things in a heartbeat. And Annie, I don't, not as much. She does seem to be a little nostalgic on things. She's posting these wonderful young people who are doing these Sweet Dreams redos and everything. And that's coming up with the 40th anniversary. And I'm sure she feels nostalgic toward it. But I don't know. I mean, I'm more of a similar age to Annie and Dave. And so I can kind of see physically, I don't think Annie wants to do it or can do it. I mean, I think her feet are, she's got back issues and stuff like that. And
And frankly, I mean, they don't like Dave said in our podcast, they don't have to do a normal tour. There are ways to do it where, it's spaced out. There's traveling's not involved, press is not involved. But having said all that, I'd just be happy with a lot of archival stuff. It just irritates me that so many other bands have so much stuff out there, and there's like nothing for Eurythmics, and I think we kind of deserve all that. I mean, let's all buy the same stuff we already have, but it's repackaged and it's nostalgic and it has some B-sides and things we haven't heard and photos we haven't seen, and we know it's all there. So
Well,
I know it's coming. It's coming. This is probably going to be the last thing. It would be this stuff.
there could be so many things released. I mean, a concert recording from each of the tours. We know they've recorded them. And I think that would be something that could be done. There's still B-sides and remixes and all sorts of stuff that didn't get released.
Right.
And either one of the, remaster section, it's particularly, of course,
I have two words for that: beautiful armadillo.
whatever.
Beautiful.
I
Wow.
want to hear that song.
Yeah. Well, maybe so. It would be great. So, I think there, and a lot of established artists, Aha's done it, Cyndi Lauper's done it. I'm certain there are others where they take their breakthrough album and they do a concert, sometimes a concert tour based on that album, and they perform every song from that album, and then they usually will have something extra at the end of it, of course, with other songs. But you could see something like that happening for Sweet Dreams. And with all the streaming services out there, I don't think there'd be any issue whatsoever in getting someone, okay, you want to do a one-off concert, and we'll do that. I mean, I think
I could see a Sweet Dreams 40th anniversary concert in LA.
Yeah.
Simulcast or something like that. And but here's something. Why don't we all go around and say, if we could say, what would be the one thing we would want to come out from the archives or whatever, that, what's the one thing you would really like to have if you had your choice, the first thing that would come out?
I'll start. I think I would like to have a really good professional recording of the Touch Tour. There's a bunch of bootlegs.
A video or audio or both? Or both?
Gosh, I would kill for a video. Kill for a video. And I was just watching before the podcast. Steve has the performance from Sweden that they did that was telecast on television back in the day, Touch Tour footage. Well, it was a concert that they did. And I've always thought, okay, because they changed outfits throughout. So there's the first Comes the Rain Again, and all this Sweet Dreams, and it ends up with Wrap It Up, and she has different outfits on throughout. So I've always thought, I think it's a 5 or 6 song set, but I've always thought, well, she didn't just change clothes for one song. No. They performed their whole Touch Tour set for this audience where this was recorded. Somewhere, there's footage of that entire concert. And that would be, so I would love to have, because it's the only tour, Eurythmics tour, that we don't have video, a professional video. Right. So I'd love to see that. I'd love audio from it, because they did different songs throughout the different sets of the Touch Tour. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just, I think I would love that. I think because there's not a really good recording. There's a lot of bootlegs and some of them are pretty good, but I'd love a crisp professional recording of
I
that.
agree with you on that. That is a video of that tour and audio is sorely needed. Yes.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Blu-ray. Touch
Yes.
tour Blu-ray.
Yeah. So now it's you two. What would you
Okay,
want?
Lynn, go ahead.
Well, I think that would be great. I went to the Touch Tour and I saw it, but I don't, this is how many years ago. And I tend to sort of live in the moment and I don't record, we didn't have our cameras out like we do in our phones. So I would love to see that. I would love to see all the concerts having a good version because the Sweet Dreams is only on VHS, right? Is that right?
It's
I've got it
on-
on Laserdisc.
It's
No,
on,
Laserdisc.
it's on DVD, but it's not, it hasn't been like remastered or anything.
Well, but yeah, let's talk about that for a minute. There are songs from that Sweet Dreams concert that didn't make the final video. There are 2 songs that didn't make the final Eurythmics Live Revenge Tour, Conditioned Soul and Ball and Chain. So I'd love these to be re-released and with expanded editions, of course, with those kind of things. So, and I'm certain there are recordings and B-sides we didn't get.
Oh yeah.
And remixes and stuff. So
I'm
you know,
even
there's
wondering if
been-
there's more TVP material that we haven't heard.
my
I think
guess is
so.
no, I don't think there is any. I think that we would have had it if there was, but I don't. My guess is no, but
Yeah.
if there is, yeah, let's bring it on.
Yeah. And
I
that-
would love to see Ball and Chain. That's one of my all-time favorites.
Me too.
It's amazing, as we know, in concerts, one of my favorite songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm really perplexed why they got cut. And I'm assuming at the time, you only had so much time for a video album, or maybe there was some kind of expense. But why those 2 got cut out beats me. I don't know why. But I'd love to see them added again.
Yeah.
That was my fantasy for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, was to have Ball and Chain. Then can you imagine if they'd done Ball and Chain? That would have been amazing.
Well, I
It
think
was It was
Yeah.
amazing the way it was, but
Yeah. Yeah.
when they were showing clip of Ball and Chain in the video montage, I think you and I started singing.
we did, yes. We went, woo!
Yeah.
It was great to see that clip at the beginning of the Acoustic Missionary Man, which is from Brand New Day, the documentary that was kind of
Oh.
it was released
Well,
in France
saw
or
it.
something, and that was it.
It was in It got released for a week
Yes,
in LA.
Maureen saw it in the theater there too. You probably
In
went to the
West
theater the
LA.
same time she was.
Probably,
well,
yeah.
but again, that's another piece. That's done, that's filmed, that's available. Just put it out now. At the time, I think it got some bad reviews, and they had done so much video at that time that it ended up not getting like a
Yeah.
wide release or something. But
Mhm.
you can put that out today, and it's exceptional.
It
it's
is.
It is.
Great documentary.
And you can
It
actually
was a
find
little bit
pretty
ahead of its time, actually.
yeah, yeah, you're right. It is ahead of its time. And I think maybe if they were to watch it now, they might have a different, because I did hear something about maybe they weren't too happy with it or something. If they were to watch it now, I bet you they might have a different opinion. But it was but you can find fairly decent copies out there. I mean, really good quality recordings of it.
Mhm.
Well,
but
anyway, so
But I'd like a proper release, or again, put it on, get somebody, surely Netflix or Amazon Prime or one of these, somebody would put that out on streaming, if nothing else.
Oh, I think so.
I would love I'm old school, as we all are. We show our age. I'd love a DVD or Blu-ray, whatever. But hey, I'll take streaming if that's the way I'm going to get it, with
Yeah.
me.
I've been noticing more Eurythmic songs on the like on the 80s channels that I
have
streaming
too.
80s channels ever since the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and some unusual ones that you don't normally hear. Like I heard Thorn in My Side, which is like, my God, I never hear that. At least you don't hear that in the US a lot.
Wasn't that film that they did for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? That was well done. They had some nice clips in it, and I've probably seen most of those clips one way or another, but they had some nice clips in it. They highly used, the live performance of you have placed a chill in my heart. And they used it very effectively. It was to sort of end it and to sort, that kind of emotional aspect to it. But I thought that was a really well done film.
I thought it was great too. I think they could have put 30 seconds in there talking about their innovative videos. They didn't really mention that.
I noticed that too.
They showed a few clips, Sweet Dreams, Here Comes the Rain Again, but that's something big with them. They're known for that. So maybe it was obvious. I don't know.
I would have liked just 15 seconds where they sort of talked about, I wish they'd said, and they released an album every year and sometimes twice a year, and did this many tours. And
didn't she say though that all the ideas most of the ideas for the videos were Dave's and all? She did mention that in the clip. So she
did.
So there was something about that. Anyways, I need to tell you my picks for what.
Oh yes, yes.
So what I would really like to see come out first, and maybe this is a cheat because I'm including all of them at once, but I just think we need like Sweet Dreams, the Sweet Dreams, a video album, Eurythmics Live, We Two Are One Two, and Savage. We need all that on Blu-rays, HD Blu-rays, and also streaming and available for digital download as well. I think that's the first step. Get those out there because we've already have the remastered albums, and that's kind of the next stuff that came out, right? Then we can talk about like, okay, all the B-sides we haven't heard, or let's reissue this, reissue that. So that's what I'd like to see.
I don't think the record company understands just if they were to release Savage, the video album, for example, let's just take that one, how big of a seller that would be. I don't think they grasp, because, Savage was not their biggest album, of course, and I have no idea how many copies Savage, the video album, sold back in the day. I would think pretty well.
Yeah.
But I don't think they understand the sheer desire from fans for their videos. I don't think they do.
No, and two of our podcasts that are among the most highly downloaded are on Savage and 1984. Those are among our top two most favorite, most downloaded podcasts. You talk to fans, and what do they say? They say 1984. They say Savage. Get that stuff out. It makes money, and we want it.
And that's the other that. I've got lots of wants, but if 1984 again, different Virgin still owns that, I guess, but they did have the remastered version of it on the beautiful red vinyl in 2018,
which sounds stunning, by the way.
Oh yes, but I mean, there is so much archival material. Dave talks about it, that they had, just the film score itself, the Eurythmics part of the film score, you could do that as bonus tracks. You could, and I don't think these record companies really have an idea of, they're setting on a gold mine. I mean, and I'm not quite sure how we get that across to people. Do we start a letter writing campaign?
Start emailing.
No.
Yeah.
Hopefully, maybe we can get their attention drawn to this podcast. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it would be, there's so much available, that, and I don't know what the difficulty is in collecting all this and putting it out there. I don't know what it takes to do that, but someone should do it. There's money.
I'm sure that Dave and Annie have to be involved with things and give okays and approvals or whatever, or maybe not. Sometimes things are put out and they don't realize it. But
if it was something that they were involved with and the record company's involved with, and it's done correctly, what I would like to see happen, though, is when these things are happening, that there is a connection to fans, and they have a connection to fans like they've never had before. We're all on social media. We all follow them on the different. It could easily be asked, okay, we're going to do this X. What would everyone like to see, or what should be on it? Because I think, we've talked about this before. Well, people. I was a writer for years, and people will ask me sometimes, remember that time that you wrote that story? And I'll say, sort of, vaguely, yes, maybe. and I think it's the same way with Dave and Annie. You do something that's so, they were doing so much work for so long in such a small amount of time. They're not going to remember all the details. They're simply
Right.
not,
No.
especially 40 years later or 35 years later or whatever. And you can forgive them that. We've internalized this in a far different way than they have, and certainly in a different way than the record companies have. We see these things in a different way. We know, hey, there was this B-side that was released in 1982 that you've never remastered. Boy, we'd really like to have that. So having fans involved in that
Yes.
is really,
Yeah, that's very true.
And you know what I would like to see too, and maybe this is something that maybe if Dave ever hears this or whatever, but whenever these remasters come out or these reissues come out, they always seem to have some sort of little bio or something of Eurythmics written that's always full of inaccuracies. I don't know who they get to write these things for them, but we, the fans, read that and we right away we see all the errors.
I know.
And how about having one of the fans write that? Like
or at
Mark,
least
who's
edit it.
Mark, who's a journalist,
Yeah.
or me, who has a website, or Steve, who has a website. I mean, we could write something that's completely accurate because, like you were saying a minute ago, Mark, we internalize this. We know it better because we're on the receiving side of it. The artist puts out stuff and moves forward. They don't tend to think backwards a lot.
They're in such a firestorm of stuff coming at them and
Right.
moving them through
Like
it.
Lawrence Stevens said, when they're in the zeitgeist, they don't have time to look back. So
Yeah. But, if anyone wants to ask us,
yes, or maybe we could all collaborate together on it. I mean,
well, it would be a fun thing, and I think, remember on the Touch tour, they had Eurythmics fans at the tours to kind of promote the fan club and stuff, and
right.
I think we were going to have our names listed on something, and I don't think that ever actually happened.
Well,
but
there was that discography that came out with all of our names on the back in it that contributed to the discography. It was published and sent to all of us.
okay. I
Remember
don't-
that?
Really? Wow.
That paperback discography. It was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was like one of the first discographies. That was like
Yeah.
89, I think. Yeah.
So there's a lot to be done. So and just earlier today, someone was on Facebook, one of the fans, Andrew Smith, and he said 99% sure they're going to drop a brand new album 2023. Here's really hoping. So that's I just noticed that it was on one of the posts earlier on Facebook, and I don't know Andrew, but I just thought there's a lot of hope. I wrote that down because there's a lot of hope out there, and
And
that
these
there's going to be
days,
something. Yeah.
these days it's so easy to record an album. You don't have to be
Mhm.
together. I mean, you didn't have to be together.
Well, they
back then either,
pioneered
but-
that then. They pioneered that in the 80s
right. But
with
how much easier is it now?
yeah.
I mean, how about that performance they did a few years ago for that charity where they were in completely different locations, but they played live together? She
Yeah.
was on the piano, he was on the guitar. It was Beautiful Child.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
so think,
Dave has recorded 2 albums with Stuart Lindsay. They've never been in the same studio ever.
Oh
for
my
those-
gosh.
those
Wow.
are great
yeah,
albums.
exactly.
But those are you don't have to be, but what was Annie just did the one-off song in Boston for the Prince and Princess. What's it called?
Here Comes the Rain. Oh, Earthshot.
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 And I just wanted to first, I thought that was an incredibly beautiful.
Lovely.
Yeah.
But the technology for it, that
That was stunning.
very much like the Hall of Fame, where it had the technology, the even the floor
Yeah.
underneath the piano.
That was amazing. That was
Yeah.
beautiful.
But
Yeah,
I
that was
just-
really well done.
It was, but that's my point being that if they were to do something, the technology is there to do a concert or a performance with all kinds of imagery and stuff that they could take in, and they've got such a iconic imagery that they could do so many things. And that show with that one song, and I was sitting there going, wow, an
Yeah.
entire concert.
Can you
You really
imagine all
don't
that iconic imagery? I mean, and that harks back to the Peace Tour. They sort of started that. Remember the downloading thing as the concert
Yes.
was starting, and the spinning red star.
Yeah,
and as soon as it finished downloading, they came on stage. But
that
then
was,
before that, they were showing all the different clips, shots from their videos and all that. So that was kind of an early idea of what you're talking about.
Well, Dave's Eurythmics Songbook concert, the imagery and technology that he used for that, and that, I guess that was right before the pandemic or whatever. But
Yeah.
that if you can go to YouTube and see that, and
I have
it's
seen that.
it's
Yeah.
exceptional.
Yeah, I've seen it too.
And I think actually Dave has that recorded as well. I would love to have that released. Just
Somebody mentioned in at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, maybe afterwards, of having their children, their kids who are so talented involved. I mean,
well,
Lola and Kaya and
well, in the Eurythmics Songbook concert.
oh yeah, Kaya's
His
Kaya's in that.
and also his Django.
Django.
Did I Need a Man? And he was great at it.
That's great. That's great. Yeah.
But I can see, Lola and Dave's kids. All Dave's kids are exceptional musicians, and of course Lola is a great musician, and she's performed with Annie a couple of times. But I could see them being involved. And actually, I said that to Django once on Instagram or something. I said, you could call it, you all could be involved, and it's Eurythmics, the next generation. So, could really see the kid.
Did he respond to that?
Yes, he said that would be sick. And I believe that is young people.
Yes, it is. That's a good
That's a
thing.
good thing.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Well, early on at one of the, because I went to 5 of the Peace concerts, and I think it was one of the LA ones that the kids were back behind. So that would have been Chango and Sam and Lola and Tolly were
Yeah.
back behind the speakers, and you could see them kind
Yeah.
of. And then they would go over and sort of play toward them, and they would
I
go over.
remember that. Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know that I recognized Lola, but I remember seeing, I think, like Sam.
Yeah,
I
but
remember
they
I think
were.
he was he wearing shorts? For some reason, I seem to remember he was wearing shorts.
And
Well-
what is Sam's band? Is it Lamoon? What is it?
Low Moon, yeah.
Lamoon.
Low Moon.
And
They're doing quite well, actually.
Oh yeah, they really are. And he's a great guitarist on that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
But that in itself is a great documentary. If they had the kids performing with them, and you could have this archival footage of the kids from
Hmm.
the backstage watching back in the day.
Yeah.
So you've got there's lots there. You'd love to be a documentarian, and like recording some of this stuff and having part of it. It just
Yeah.
This is exactly, Rex, how you and I came to say, hey, let's do a podcast, because this conversation is very much like the kind of conversations we would have had, just kind of like, talking about things
Right.
like what would
Mhm.
happen, what we would like to see. So
Right.
this is very much like that.
Well,
even
that
like-
was the inspiration for our podcast, was our discussions, right? We
yeah,
were like,
it was. Yeah.
we were
so-
like, we should, we've said this before, people have heard this. Does anybody care to hear this? Well, apparently they do. So here we are.
Well, I listened to them, and it's great to be a part of this one today. So thank
Oh,
you for
yeah, that's
inviting me.
great.
Yeah.
Well, we're allowed like an hour and 10 minutes. So unless anybody has any final thoughts, we should probably wrap it up before our audience gets really restless. But we can say that now, Mark, we have an audience. We're approaching 1 year, so we've done pretty well. We've done pretty well.
Wow.
Well, I have to say, the one thing I would say is it was so great to be down in LA. It's down for me. And at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and seeing people and Mark, here we've been friends, but we'd never met in person. And here we sat together and experienced that whole thing. And there was so much, I feel like there was so much love. And I think I started to call us a family of fans, or, we're like a little, I think I said niche earlier, but we're sort of like a little Eurythmics fan family now.
Yeah.
So
And what did we call each other, Lynn, that night? You were my concert wife.
concert wife and concert husband. Yeah.
Because our spouses couldn't be with us. So
Yeah.
I was
very
the only
nice.
one there with a significant other, apparently.
Yeah. That was
That was
so
pointed
gracious
out.
of Amy and my Pat to,
Well, Carrie had her husband, I think.
Yeah.
Amy made sure to tell me to keep Mark out of trouble, so we did.
And I still had those lemon drop martinis.
I didn't stay out of trouble. No, I didn't. No, it's-
But yeah, no. So, but one thing that Lynn and I did, by the way, we were teenagers again. We had really great seats, and we had seats in 1 and 2, so we were on the aisle.
Mhm.
Eurythmics started performing, and I will have to tell you, we were egged on by the children with their parents in front of us, and I think they said, "Hey, y'all should go down to the front."
Oh, yeah.
And Lynn said, "Yeah," and she says, "Come on, Mark," and she gets me, and we go. So we went down to the front behind where, the
The
inductees.
VIPs, yeah.
And so we went down there during the
That's
performance
great.
and danced
Yeah.
up and danced. We
did.
went back for the film. We went back and sat because the film show, afterward. Correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
Well, no, the film was,
No, it was the film was first, and
First, and then we
we went
down
back for them to accept.
for the
Yeah.
acceptance.
At one point, I went back to, I was in front of Mark and I went back to hug Mark and I hugged another man. Oh, I met
well,
you.
Yeah, yeah.
and,
There was
I
a
think
lot
it's-
of love that night.
I
There
think
was a
it's
lot
worth
of love
pointing
going
out
around.
that we were all there in this giant auditorium unmasked, and I don't think anybody came down with COVID, right, from the group. Somebody may have had a flu or something or a little cold, but I don't think COVID.
Ruth got it a week later, so she didn't get it there.
No,
She
not
didn't-
there. Yeah.
Yeah, I was convinced. I was like, okay, I'm not going to be able to be on this many planes, this many airports, and at a concert, and at a
And you had
gallery.
such a time getting home. My God.
Oh yeah, it was very long.
I had to go on Tamiflu for you, Mark.
Yeah, I had the flu when I got
Yeah.
I did my little 4-hour drive up the freeway, and I'm home, and I'm like, so Mark, and he's like, well, I'm stuck here, and now I'm going to be stuck there, and it's going to be
You
24
poor
hours. And I'm
thing.
still not home, and I'm like, oh my God.
It was still worth it. It was
No,
still.
of
I
course,
would
it
have
was
done it
totally
all
worth it.
again in a heartbeat. I would have done it all again in a
Mark and I were eating red vine. I was eating red vines and Mark was having popcorn at one point. It was so funny. It was a long, long
during the
concert.
show, you mean?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Well,
I was eating-
You know, I never
After
got
you
out of
did
my
it-
seat during the whole show, except for about 2-3 minutes to run to the bathroom and back. I never did anything else.
Yeah, after Eurythmics performed, I calmed myself down enough to go get a Coke and a thing of popcorn because again we're headed toward 5 hours by the time Eurythmics had performed. So I let myself calm down because we sort of knew or had heard when they were probably going to come
Yeah.
on.
We
But
knew where they were in the set, but
Yeah, but until you see it, you don't know that that's the exact. So I wasn't about to leave my seat.
No,
the
Mark
be-
was
at
like,
the
don't
beginning-
go, don't go.
at the beginning you're like, the first few acts you're counting, okay, that one took 20 minutes, that one took like 25. So it should be around this time that they'll come on. No, that's all out the window because things change and not everything is the same length. But
I told one of my friends that they said, how is Dr. Dre? And I said, I don't know. I went to the restroom and got a soft drink at that point.
So it was great. I mean, it was so glad to experience with so
Oh,
yeah. And
And
so
all
great
the
to meet all the
fans.
fans that I had never met in person and finally to have met in person.
And I
all
had
of you guys,
breakfast
it was just great.
I had breakfast the next day after the concert and with a bunch of fans and and Lynn came over and so it was such a good time and I'd love to do these things again, have a Eurythmics reunion kind of thing with
wouldn't
fans.
that be fun?
We need a reason, I suppose. We
Yeah.
need a
Well,
concert.
Steve does kind of he used to do the fan events in the UK. Maybe we can do something in the US, we could.
Yeah.
So yeah, anybody has any thoughts on that, let us know.
Okay, well, that would be wonderful.
Well, let's
So
wrap
great.
up now. So
Okay.
I'm gonna say thank you, Lynn, for joining us. It was
Thank
great.
you. Thank you, Rex. Thank you,
You're
Mark.
welcome to join us anytime.
Oh, well, thank you.
If we don't reach out to you, you can totally reach out to us and say, hey, I'd like to talk about this. And
Okay.
we're happy with that.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you.
And
Thank
any
you.
fan can do that. Just reach out to us. We love to talk to anybody.
Yay.
yeah. And we do want to thank Steve for joining us. I know he had
Oh.
to,
Yeah.
and we'd one of our recordings we'd had a whole podcast with Steve and technology messed up. It wasn't, so
Yeah.
we hate that Steve wasn't on the whole time. He had a lot of great insights as he always does. So we're glad he was able to join us because he really gave us that really great information about
Wow.
the actual vote
Yeah.
being Eurythmics in first place. Isn't that the
That's-
coolest thing? That's the coolest thing.
it
That's
is.
so exciting. Yeah.
All right. Well, until next time, thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.